Have you ever felt it? That strange, frustrating paradox where the more desperately you want something, the faster it seems to run in the opposite direction? Think about it. The more you ache for that one specific person to text you back, the more your phone stays stubbornly silent. The more you yearn for people to finally see you, to understand you, the more invisible and forgotten you feel. You crave success. You chase after it with everything you've got, but the big break just keeps slipping through your fingers. This isn't happening because you're unlucky. It's not because you're unworthy, and it's definitely not cruel fate playing games with your life. It's happening because of a silent, powerful signal you are constantly sending out into the universe. It's a vibration. And this vibration, born from a deep-seated feeling of lack, is broadcasting a message that, on an energetic level, gradually drives away the very things you desire most. Even if you're putting on a brave face, smiling through the anxiety, and trying your best to appear calm and collected, your energy field is always, without exception, more honest than your words. It's telling the real story. And that story, that frequency, is sending out a signal that says, I am without. I am in need. I am not whole until I have that thing. And reality, in turn, creates a corresponding response. You see, you don't attract what you think about. You don't even attract what you say you want. You attract what you are. You attract based on your frequency. As long as your fundamental energy is one of chasing, of running after something, of clinging on for dear life, you are, in that very same moment, unconsciously pushing it away. This isn't just a story about desire. It's a story about vibration. It's physics, on a spiritual level. The moment you can finally stop the chase, stop trying to control every outcome, and stop reinforcing the belief that you are lacking something essential, you return to your center. And from that center, you no longer need to chase or pull or attract. From that center, you simply begin to shine. And everything that is meant for you begins to find its way to you, drawn in by your light. This might sound a little abstract, but we've all felt it in a very real way. Think about the energy in a room. Some vibrations don't need to be heard with your ears, yet they can change the entire atmosphere. A person walks into a gathering. They don't say a word. They don't do anything particularly special, but there's something about thema groundedness, a quiet confidence, and suddenly, all eyes are drawn to them. They have a presence. Conversely, we've all met people who, despite their best efforts, despite saying all the right things, just make us feel heavy. Something feels off. You can't quite put your finger on it, but you sense a neediness, a tension just beneath the surface. This isn't found in their words. It's their energy field. And the energy field never lies. The world as your mirror, a Jungian perspective. Now, that idea of an energy field might sound like modern spiritual talk, but one of the greatest minds of the 20th century, the psychologist Carl Jung, understood this concept on an incredibly deep level. He didn't necessarily use words like vibration in the way we do today, but he saw the human consciousness, both the parts we're aware of and the vast, hidden parts we aren't, a living, breathing, magnetic field. Jung believed that when you emit these vibrations born of lack, when you're operating from a place filled with desperate craving, the need to control, and a constant hum of anxiety, you are sending out a very specific signal. And that signal screams, I don't have this. I am afraid. I am not enough. And the universe, along with every person you interact with, doesn't respond to what you're saying with your mouth. It responds to what you are with your being. In his field of analytical psychology, Carl Jung explained that any desperate longing that comes from a wounded ego inevitably activates what he called the shadow. Now, the shadow isn't just your dark side or the evil part of you. It's much broader than that. The shadow is everything you refuse to acknowledge about yourself. It's the parts you push away, the feelings you deny, the insecurities you dare not look at. So think about it. When you desperately chase after love because you're terrified of being lonely, you aren't actually pursuing love. You're acting from your shadow. You're being driven by the unconscious, unacknowledged belief that you simply cannot be whole on your own. When you chase success with a frantic energy because deep down you feel worthless without it, you're not acting from a place of authentic passion. You're acting from an inner crack, a wound in your soul that you're trying to patch up with external validation. Jung had a specific term for how this plays out in our lives: projection. This is the phenomenon where our unconscious mind takes all those unintegrated, unhealed parts of ourselves and casts them onto the outside world like a movie projector. In one of his most profound works, he wrote that projections change the world into a replica of one's unknown face. Let that sink in for a moment. The world you experience isn't objective reality. It is a mirror reflecting the parts of your own face you have never seen. It mirrors the wounds you carry but refuse to acknowledge. Imagine this scenario, and be honest if you've been here. You step into a new relationship. On the surface you play it cool. You appear confident, joyful, like you don't need a thing. But deep inside, a secret drama is unfolding. You're constantly checking your phone, waiting for that next message. You're dissecting their words, their punctuation. You're imagining 1,000 worst-case scenarios if they don't respond exactly how you hoped. This is a classic vibration born from lack. Even if you never say a word of this out loud, that anxious, grasping energy still radiates from you. The other person senses it. They might not be able to explain why, but they feel it in the subtle tension in your gaze. They feel it in the silences between your words. They might even feel it in the rhythm of your own heartbeat when you're close. And this energy makes them gradually, instinctively pull away. Not because they don't like you, but because on a deep, primal level, nobody wants to be pulled into an energy field that is demanding to be filled. It feels like a black hole. This is exactly what Jung meant when he famously said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Until you have the courage to face the true motivation hiding beneath your desires, you will continue to be led by it, stumbling through the same patterns, the same heartbreaks, the same disappointments, all while thinking it's just your destiny. But it isn't destiny, it's a reflection. And in the next part, we're going to explore how to finally stop polishing the mirror and start healing the face within. The ego's agenda versus the soul's truth. So many of us get stuck in this cycle. We realize something is wrong, we see the pattern and we try to fix it. We read all the books on the law of attraction. We stand in front of the mirror repeating affirmations. We create vision boards. And we spend hours trying to imagine an ideal future where we finally have what we want. But so often, it doesn't work. The needle doesn't move. We fail to realize that you can't just slap a positive thinking sticker over a deep vibrational wound. It's not what you want that gets attracted to you. It's what you are. And if your foundational energy, the very core of your being, is emitting signals of fear, of lack, of deep insecurity about who you are, then you are sending the universe one crystal clear message. I don't have it. I am not enough. And by the fundamental law of frequency, you will simply attract more experiences that confirm that reality. People who are indifferent, opportunities that just miss the mark, and relationships that become a perfect mirror for your own self-doubt. To really get to the bottom of this, we have to go back to Jung and understand one of his most crucial distinctions, the difference between the ego and what he called the self, which we can think of as the soul. The ego is the part of you that wants to control everything. It's the master strategist, the planner, the part of you that needs to possess, to own, and to prove its worth. The ego is always looking for validation from the outside world. When you act from your ego, you always feel this constant pressure to do something, to send the perfect text, to make the right impression, to be chosen, to be kept, to do whatever it takes to avoid loss. The ego is terrified of uncertainty and operates almost entirely from a place of fear. The soul, on the other hand, is the part of you that needs no reason to simply be present. The soul is your authentic core. It doesn't need to strategize or prove its value. When you live from your soul, you no longer feel that desperate need to pursue, because you operate from a place of profound inner security. You recognize, I am myself. What is meant for me will find me, and what is meant to stay will stay, without force or manipulation. In his book, The Undiscovered Self, Jung said that the soul demands your truth, not your loyalty to conformity. The soul doesn't need you to twist yourself into a pretzel to please others. It needs you to have the raw courage to live in alignment with your own inner truth, regardless of external approval. These vibrations of lack we've been talking about are, ultimately, the vibrations of the ego. They are vibrations of fear, the fear of being abandoned, the fear of being unseen. They are the echoes of unhealed memories, the cries of an inner child who is still waiting for someone, anyone, to come along and finally say, "You are worthy. You are enough." But here is the profound and sometimes difficult truth. No one can bring you that message from the outside if you have not first learned to send that signal from within yourself. No amount of external validation can heal an internal wound. This is why Jung famously stated, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens." As long as you are looking outside of yourself for the love, the security, or the validation you crave, you are dreaming. You are chasing a phantom. The awakening happens when you turn your gaze inward. You stop searching for what you're seeking out there and realize it's not ahead of you in the future. It's in the frequency you are emitting in this very moment. When you can shift that frequency from pleading to presence, from anxious expectation to grounded steadiness, from fear to trust, then you will no longer have to chase. Everything will finally start to find you. Not because you did it right, but because you have finally become the right person. So the question to ask yourself is this: are you living from the center of your being? Or are you sending out a signal begging someone to confirm you are worthy? In the next part, we'll look at a real-life story of someone who was stuck in this exact loop and how she finally broke free. The woman who did everything right, but kept getting it wrong. Carla's story. This is the profound truth that Jung wants us to understand. You do not attract by what you wish for. You attract by what you are. When the energy deep inside you is stuck on a loop, broadcasting a signal of lack, of waiting, of the deep-seated fear of being abandoned, then your external reality will become a relentless mirror, reflecting that same vibration back to you, over and over again. Now, to see how this operates not just in theory but in the messy, complicated reality of our lives, I want to tell you the story of a woman named Carla. This is a vivid and authentic example of what Jung would call a psychic wound that cries out much louder than our words ever could. On paper, Carla was the kind of woman many people aspire to be. She was intelligent, fiercely independent, and highly self-aware. At 34, she went through a devastatingly painful breakup with a man who, for years, had been her entire world. But afterwards, she didn't run from the pain. In fact, she did the opposite. Carla embarked on what you could only describe as a model healing journey. She read all the right books. She meditated daily. She filled journals with her reflections. She invested in therapy courses. She prioritized self-care, and she diligently worked on rebuilding her self-esteem from the ground up. To anyone looking from the outside, Carla appeared to be the perfect ideal of a woman who had bravely overcome her past. She was strong, she was healed, she was whole. But there was one thing she absolutely could not explain: a frustrating pattern that kept repeating itself. Every single time she started a new connection with someone, even if it started out gentle, promising, and full of potential, it would inevitably fall into the same predictable orbit. The other person would gradually, inexplicably become distant. The communication would grow fragile. And in the end, the relationship would just break apart, often without any clear reason or dramatic fight. It would simply fizzle out, leaving Carla more confused than before. This is where things finally became clear for her, not through logic or reason, but through a single moment of profound, gut-punching awakening. It happened in an intensive therapy session. Her therapist, after listening quietly for a long time, looked straight into her eyes and said 5 words that would change everything. "Your energy is begging for confirmation." That single remark struck the very core that all of Carla's healing efforts had somehow missed. It was a lightning bolt of truth. She realized in that instant that she hadn't truly let go of anything. She had only done everything in her power to prove that she was now worthy of love. Although her external life and her conscious thoughts had changed, her inner energy, the silent vibration she was emitting, was still desperately clinging. Not to her ex, not to a specific person, but to a pattern. The pattern of waiting for the one who would finally come and heal her. The person who would finally confirm that she was enough. Carla wasn't actually living in the presence of her new connections. She was living in the unconscious, high-stakes expectation that this time someone would act differently. This time they would give her the validation she craved, so she would no longer have to feel like she had failed at love. She wasn't loving them for who they were. She was waiting for them to rescue her from herself. And that energy, that desperate plea for confirmation, was the very thing ensuring her history would continue to repeat itself. The real reason: healing doesn't always work. So how is it possible? How can someone like Carla do all the right things, the therapy, the journaling, the self-care, and still find herself trapped in the exact same heartbreaking loop? This is where we have to understand a critical distinction that goes to the very heart of Jung's work. Carl Jung once said, "We do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. We don't reach a state of wholeness by just thinking positive thoughts. We get there by having the courage to face the darkness we carry within ourselves." And the darkness that Carla had to finally confront wasn't her obvious pain. It wasn't her ex-boyfriend or her memories of the breakup. The real darkness was the subtle, insidious, unconscious belief that she would not be truly whole unless and until she was chosen by someone else. That was the hidden operating system running in the background of her life. This explains why all of her positive, healthy healing actions were still being guided by a begging energy. Her self-love wasn't unconditional. It was a transaction. It was a disguised form of control that said, "I will love myself perfectly. I will become the ideal healed woman, as long as someone else shows up to confirm that I am, in fact, lovable." It was a strategy, not a state of being. But energy doesn't operate on conditions. Your vibrational field doesn't care about the checklist of healing modalities you've completed. It only responds to the raw, honest-to-God signal of who you truly believe you are, deep down in your bones. And from that place, Carla's reality was continuously reflecting back a single, brutal lesson. When you are demanding confirmation from the outside world, you are emitting a vibration that says, "I do not have enough on my own." And the universe, as Jung pointed out, doesn't give you what you want. It gives you what you are. It was simply answering her true energetic call. After that life-altering therapy session, Carla didn't change her strategy to be loved. She changed her entire mindset. She didn't force herself to stop feeling things or to be less open. Instead, she began to simply observe her own impulses with radical honesty. When she met someone new, and she felt that familiar old urge to expect too much, too soon, She didn't blame herself or shut down. She would pause, take a breath, and ask herself the game-changing question, am I loving this person for who they are in this moment, or am I waiting for them to confirm that I am enough? This courageous self-awareness was the turning point. That simple question was the key that began to shift her entire vibration. It wasn't about loving less or moving slower. It was about learning to love from a place of genuine fullness, not from a place of gaping need. From that moment on, her energy no longer sent out a begging signal. She was no longer broadcasting on the frequency of, "Please, choose me so that I can finally be me." She had finally, truly, chosen herself. And when you choose yourself, the entire world shifts. It's no longer a scary place where you have to audition for love and be saved from loneliness. It becomes a playground, a place to live, to share, to shine. There's no more chasing, no more waiting, no more desperate need to prove your worth. There is simply the quiet power of being present. Because as Jung wrote, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. It's not rejection from others that we fear most. It's the terror and the glory of daring to accept ourselves, flaws and all. And when you finally do that, you no longer need anyone else to confirm anything. You become a field of fullness, a place where no signal of lack can possibly reside. And that, right there, is the moment when everything you ever sought begins to find you. The difference between letting go and just holding on tighter. After understanding how a wounded ego can unconsciously sabotage our lives, we arrive at an even more important truth. Merely understanding this isn't liberation. The intellect, the conscious mind, can read all the books, watch all the videos, and proudly declare, "Okay, I get it. I have let go." But if the energy inside your body, in your nervous system, is still emitting that same old signal of clinging and fear, you are still on the same frequency. And the world will continue to mirror that frequency back to you, no matter how healed you think you are. Let's get really honest with ourselves for a moment. Picture this. You have a sigh of frustration, you look at your phone, and you tell yourself, "That's it. I'm not texting anymore. I'm fine. I'm moving on." You put the phone face down on the table, but just a few minutes later you find yourself secretly, quietly unlocking it. Not to text, but just to check. To see if they're online. To wait for a sign, any sign, that proves you are still being thought of. On the surface, you're telling yourself you are letting go. But inside, your entire nervous system is on high alert, buzzing with anticipation and anxiety. That is not peace. That is control disguised as silence. And at this critical intersection, where our mature intentions clash with our lingering, clinging energy, we begin a lesson that can be hard to swallow, but is essential for deep transformation. We have to learn the difference between control and surrender. We often mistake control for strength. We think it's about taking action, being proactive, and doing what's necessary to make sure things don't fall apart. But in truth, spiritual and psychological control is a contraction of consciousness. It is fear wrapped up in a perfectly reasonable explanation. It's the ego's desperate attempt to manage uncertainty through constant analysis, speculation, intervention, and at times that feigned indifference we just talked about. Jung taught that the ego seeks to control what the soul has not yet integrated. You don't act from a place of strength. You act from a place of fear that you are unwilling to admit to yourself. Imagine you've started a new relationship. The other person texts a little less for a day. The healthy, surrendered soul doesn't even notice or simply trusts that they're busy. The controlling ego, however, goes into overdrive. It feels an overwhelming compulsion to do something. Should I send a funny meme to remind them I exist? Should I stay completely silent to see if they notice my absence? Maybe I should ask an indirect question to try and figure out their state of mind. None of these actions are inherently wrong. but look at the inner state that's driving them. If it stems from a frantic inability to simply sit with uncertainty, then you are not connecting. You are controlling. Jung wrote that when an inner situation remains unconscious, it appears outside as fate. If you fail to recognize that your life is being governed by a deep fear of losing control, you will continue to attract situations that force you to feel out of control, until you either completely exhaust yourself or you finally awaken. Surrender, on the other hand, is the opposite of this. And let's be clear, surrender is not weakness. It is not standing still and passively waiting for a miracle. Surrender is the single most powerful act of a mind that is at rest in itself. It is the moment you no longer feel the need to force reality to follow your ego's script. It's when you can release your white-knuckled grip on outcomes because you deeply trust that what belongs to you will arrive without effort, and what doesn't can only bring you pain if you try to hold on to it. It is the courage to stop waging war against yourself and the unknown. It's when you no longer need certainty to feel safe. If you find yourself living in that exhausting energy of clinging just to avoid loss, remember this: control doesn't keep you safe. It only keeps you from actually living. The ultimate state, the power of presence. But surrender doesn't mean you disappear. Letting go of control doesn't mean you become a passive bystander in your own life. This brings us to a dimension that few people truly understand, what Carl Jung considered the true center of a vibrant spiritual life, the power of presence. If control is action born from fear, and surrender is the act of releasing that fear, then presence is the state of being that blossoms in the aftermath. It's a holistic energy that doesn't arise from doing anything, but from an inner state of grounded calm that demands nothing from the world. It is the energy that doesn't chase, doesn't defend, and doesn't seek affirmation. It simply is. Now, vibrational presence isn't measured by how many minutes you can meditate each day or how many seconds you can force your mind to be silent. It is the living, breathing energy field you emit when your mind, your emotions, and your body are no longer racing toward an imagined future or recoiling into a painful past. It is the simple, profound state of being truly here, right now, unoccupied by worry, expectation, or hidden fear. Jung wrote in The Undiscovered Self that freedom stretches only as far as the limits of our consciousness. If you are not fully present, you are not fully free. You are still living within the unconscious sphere of control, where your energy simply reacts to life instead of choosing its response. Think about someone you've met whose mere entrance into a room brought you a sense of comfort, safety, or renewed vitality. They might not have been the most handsome or beautiful person, the most talkative, or the most eager to prove anything. Yet they showed up, fully. They were present. That is the power we're talking about. There's no showmanship, no clever tactics, yet the entire space around them shifts. Because when you are fully present with yourself, you don't need to do anything to make an impression. You are the impression. If you're still with me, I want you to try something. Just for a moment, pause this video, put down your phone, and close your eyes for 5 seconds. In that silence, just notice, are you really here, in your body, listening? Or is your body just sitting here while your mind has already wandered off to your to-do list, your worries, or what you're going to eat later? This is a small but powerful test of presence. And if you realize you weren't fully here, you're not alone. Presence doesn't come from sheer intention. It comes from practice. Jung described the process of returning to this center of the self, what he called individuaciones, a journey through layer upon layer of illusions, wounds, and unconscious reflexes, until nothing remains but this unconditional presence. He said the true self is a union of opposites. It's only when you stop striving to become something else's martyr, more likable, more independent, that you can begin to be fully present as your complete, undivided self. A woman named Daniela provides a beautiful example. For years, she was stuck in the same exhausting cycle, meet someone new, feel a rush of excitement, and then let crippling anxiety take over. She would analyze every message, wait by the phone, and need constant positive reactions to feel safe. It left her drained. Until one day, she made what she called a decision of radical stillness. She didn't withdraw from life or dating. She withdrew from reaction. She stopped chasing connections. She stopped strategizing her replies. And each day, she simply practiced being present, in her body, in her breath, in the silent space between thoughts. She didn't force herself to feel better. She only committed to showing up more authentically for herself. A week passed, then two. Nothing dramatic happened on the outside, but gradually she realized the inner turmoil was gone. She no longer felt that lurch of anxiety when she didn't get a reply. She no longer clung to every small interaction as if it were a lifeline. She felt clear, and from that place of clarity, the connections that came to her no longer repeated the old, painful scripts. There was no tension, no struggle, because she was no longer attracting from a place of lack, but from the magnetic field of her own grounded presence. From there, everything begins to shift, not because of what you do, but because at last, you have truly become yourself. The how-to guide, practicing vibrational detachment. But presence, though powerful, doesn't just drop into our laps like a gift. It is the result of a deep inner discipline. It requires a willingness to stop reacting, to choose observation over control, and to finally face ourselves in the silence that we once tried so desperately to fill with noise and anxiety. Presence simply cannot survive in a mind that is constantly being hijacked by fear. This is where you have to learn and actively practice what I call vibrational detachment. Now, this does not mean you become cold, indifferent, or that you stop having desires. Vibrational detachment is the highest form of commitment you can make to yourself. It is the unwavering promise that you will not betray your own inner peace just to keep an unhealthy connection or to soothe a momentary anxiety. It begins by daring to notice the very subtle signs that you are pursuing something from an energy of lack. You know the feeling. You've sent a message, and now you're in that agonizing limbo of waiting. You can't bear the silence. Each minute that passes without a reply sends your mind spiraling into chaos. Your imagination starts writing dramatic scripts of rejection and abandonment. Your hand physically itches to act, to write something else, to ask a question, to check their social media status, anything to break the tension. That feeling is not your true nature. That is the frequency of lack hijacking your entire system. Jung warned about this in his work. He said that an activated complex, one of our deep, unhealed wound scan, put us momentarily under the control of an autonomous personality. In simpler terms, it means our wound temporarily takes over the driver's seat, and we believe we are reacting reasonably, when in reality, we are being completely manipulated from within. If you find yourself easily triggered, unable to wait, always needing explanations and reassurances just to steady your emotions, then you are likely not loving from a place of fullness. You are communicating through the vibration of lack, and the world senses it as a silent cry for help, even if you never speak a word of it. The way out of this invisible prison lies not in more action, but in learning to stop. You must learn to catch yourself the moment that anxious impulse arises. The moment you feel that frantic urge to send an unnecessary message, the moment you feel compelled to do something to secure the connection, that is your moment of power. Here is the practice. First, you do nothing for the first 3 minutes of that restless feeling. Just breathe. Do not touch your phone. Do not look for distractions. Just sit with the raw energy of that anxiety. Second, in that pause, you ask yourself the critical question, am I about to act because I am present and inspired, or because I am afraid? This creates a sacred space between the stimulus and your response. Third, you must create a daily space of intentional silence. even if it's just for 10 minutes. No screens, no music, no one else, just you and your breath. In that quiet space, you can whisper a new truth to yourself. I do not chase. I do not cling. I am present. You don't even have to believe it at first. The goal is to repeat it until this new, calmer vibration begins to imprint itself on your body, bit by bit. If you keep coming back to that old, painful question of, how do I get someone to love me? You must have the courage to invert it and ask, which part of myself still does not believe I am worthy of love? As Jung reminds us, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Vibrational detachment is the practice of making it conscious. Then, when you stop chasing, stop demanding, and stop striving to be seen, a true miracle begins. You finally become the very thing you were once so desperately seeking. Becoming magnetic, radiate, don't chase. So we arrive at the final, simple truth. You do not need to learn how to attract. You only need to learn how to live in tune with your own true frequency. True radiance, the kind of magnetic energy that draws people and opportunities to you effortlessly, does not arise from effort. It arises from clarity. It is the natural byproduct of a life lived from the energy of fullness, not from the energy of lack. When you finally stop pursuing not just in your physical actions, but in the silent, unconscious vibration you emit, you stop running toward what you want, and you simply remain in your truth. And from that still point, from that center of your being, you begin to emit an irresistible field. It's a silence that is full of attraction. It's a state of ease that naturally allows what doesn't fit to fall away, and what is truly right for you to come to you without a fight. Therefore, the journey was never about becoming someone else's better version of you that is finally worthy of love or success. The entire journey is only about returning to the center of yourself. It's about letting the stillness speak for you. It's about letting your energy, your quiet confidence, radiate and enter a room before you even do. It's about letting the fullness you've cultivated within be the unspoken call that the world simply cannot ignore. Because you no longer need to chase, you no longer need to manipulate with fear or persuade with sweet words. You no longer need someone else to understand you in order to feel valuable. You don't attract through clever strategies or by projecting an artificial perfection. You attract by the raw, authentic frequency of who you are when you are fully present and no longer denying any part of yourself. You no longer need to be chosen because you have finally, irrevocably, chosen yourself. And that, right there, is the most powerful and magnetic vibration in the entire universe. It cannot be faked, it cannot be resisted, and it will change every aspect of your life. If these insights have touched something deep within you, if you feel that pull toward living more authentically, being free from the chase, and healing from the inside out, then don't leave just yet. This conversation is just the beginning. Subscribe to this channel to continue the journey back to yourself. A journey where you learn that you need not chase anything, because everything essential has always been, and always will be, waiting for you right here, within. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss our next content. Goodbye.